Down to Art. Conversations about the creative process.
With your host, Kristy Gordon. As many of you know, my new book, Become a Great Artist, is now available for pre-order. And right now, when you pre-order a copy of the book, you'll also get free access to my new online course on color and composition in art, which is regularly valued at $160. So click the link in the description and pre-order a copy of the book now and get free access to the course. Well, today we'll be talking about how to create your own art shows and create your own opportunities with Ekaterina Popova. And she's an internationally acclaimed artist whose work's been shown in galleries around the world. She's also the founder of Create Magazine and Art Queens and is the host of Art and Cocktails podcast. So welcome, Ekaterina. So good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you. I'm a huge fan of all the things that you do.
Oh, well, same with me. You do so many things. And I'm especially excited right now that you're going to be teaching a class coming up about how people can create their own art shows. And I just wanted to bring you onto the podcast to talk to you about this because it's something that I've been, I tell a lot of the artists that I work with a lot that we can actually do this and create like our own solo show, have like a solo show on our CV, and it opens up opportunities. I did it when I was like starting out and stuff. And and I don't see people doing it that often. So yeah, do you want to tell us, well, first of all, a little bit about how you came to realize that this is the type of thing that people can do? Do you have any experience yourself?
I definitely do. And thank you again for having me. I'm so excited. This topic is so dear to my heart. And just for context, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kat and I'm an artist and I also run Create Magazine. And I think a lot of the things that I'm doing now actually started because I found out that I can create my own opportunities. It was like a weird secret that I felt like I was doing something wrong. I thought like I failed and I was just struggling to get by. But then the universe showed me that actually, no, this is the way. So for me, it all started when I graduated from art school with my undergrad. I got into graduate school for art therapy, but I couldn't afford to go. And I remember one of the professors in that program saying to me, "Hey, your art's pretty good. You should probably give it a go as an artist." And that little moment like really stuck in my head. So I was like, okay, I can't go to grad school, but let me just do everything I can with what I got now. And like many of us, I started applying to juried shows, cold pitching myself to galleries. And as you know, things don't always just magically unfold. I had some like glimmers that were telling me I was on the right path, but a lot of it was just like empty spaces. And I was very committed. So after getting a bunch of no's, I was like, well, why don't I just hang my work up somewhere? And that's kind of how it all started. And that led to other thoughts like, what if I start my own magazine? Wait a minute. And so the rest, we can definitely dive into specifics, but it was just a huge mindset shift of instead of waiting for someone to invite me, which they weren't at the time. And that was very discouraging to realize, oh, I can just hang it on the wall.
Totally. And once we do, other opportunities will open up too. Like, did you have anything like that happen for you? What's opened up since when you started creating your own opportunities?
Oh my goodness, so much has opened up. And I think one of the biggest things was just being in front of people. I think as artists, a lot of us are introverted and might not be comfortable, but when I had a show, and this was like probably 2 years after I graduated, I was like really getting into it. I had a show at the local opera house. And I showed up to the opening and I just talked to everyone who was there. I left my postcards. And even when I wasn't obviously it was only one opening, people would email me and they were like, "Hey, I saw your show at the local opera house. It's really nice to connect with you." And that was just starting to get my wheels turning and tell me like, oh, people do want to interact with art. People are interested and it might not be a traditional space, but you will start building your collectors. So that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was I started to meet local curators because our community, especially when I first moved here, there's a lot of young curators that were graduating and were taking roles at the local museums. And I started to connect with them and they invited me to shows later on, like months and years later on. They were curating shows. And so one thing after another, and slowly it was like these baby steps that started to happen because of just putting myself in spaces in front of people. So that's kind of was the beginning of really building a community, starting with locally. And people, I think, underestimate the power of local communities, even if they're not as glamorous as, say, like New York or LA. There's still people here who care about art, who want to collect art or create opportunities for artists.
That is actually so true. And sometimes it's actually good if you're in a like community that's not like New York or LA. Because when I first got started as an artist, I lived in Ottawa and I was able to like establish myself like locally in that community. And to this day, some of the collectors that, started buying my work back then, they still buy my work now. And then I was able to develop like a little bit of a track history and eventually, get into New York galleries. But it's actually really hard to start out like say first with like a New York gallery or something.
Yeah, I would love to hear if someone had that kind of like, instant
Yeah,
fame.
totally,
I
totally.
don't know if that's even a thing, but I think if it is, it could be really hard on our nervous system to go from 0 to 300 because we're not prepped. We don't have any experience talking with people and we don't know what to expect from working with galleries. So, in a way, I think like starting off locally and getting yourself really comfortable and being in those spaces can help you prepare for success. And I don't know about then I know you also are a fellow educator and you love to empower artists through your programs, but one of the questions that I get a lot, and I don't know if you get this question, is for younger artists or people just starting out, when their resume has blanks on it and they don't have an exhibition history, that's one of the reasons why I think this is so great, is because even if you put on your own show, it counts as a powerful line on your resume, like you said earlier on. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as well, because I think so many times we are like waiting for something to happen, but if we want certain opportunities, we can just start like mirroring to those people like, hey, I am already creating these shows. Let me create a show with you.
I like feel like it's probably it would seem at first to my mind like it's one of the main reasons to do it, honestly, is like you literally get to put that like a solo show listed on your CV and maybe even a couple and things can start to build quickly once you've got like a good CV that you can submit to things. But I also really liked what you were saying about how it's good that we can practice how to like engage with people and how to talk about our art and we can kind of almost develop strategies because we get to try out and pretty quickly we can see like, oh wow, that's not working and this like kind of streamline a little bit before we like are actually having a solo show in a gallery. um what are some of the well, first of all, actually, what are some of the types of venues that you find can be really good places that people can approach for a solo show, something like that?
Yeah, I love this question. I think the venue, it really, the world is your oyster. I think there's so many different amazing venues these days that, especially after COVID, I think people have a greater appreciation for in-person things and they want to create more like immersive experiences. And some of the places that I personally exhibited were obviously like coffee shops, restaurants, nonprofit centers that have white walls can be really, really beautiful because they pretty much look like a gallery. There was a show I had early on that was in a nonprofit space that was kind of used for meetings for like underprivileged like and single mothers and things like that. And but they had just perfect white walls and you could hang it up. It looked like a traditional gallery. And on my last day job, actually, shout out to Capital One, they had a gallery in their coffee shop area. Now, it wasn't open to the general public because it was a secure building, but still, it was an opportunity to connect with hundreds of employees at this corporate center. And it looked really, really nice because, as you know, corporations have money, so they could build a really nice gallery in that space. And my friend Michael actually, he helped coordinate that. So a lot of artists will partner with big businesses like hotels, banks, and stuff like that. And that doesn't cost a thing. They usually have funding for these kinds of opportunities versus if you have the budget, of course, you can rent your own storefront. One of my amazing former clients and friends, Victoria Fry, rented a beautiful storefront in Tribeca, I think 2 years ago. And it was like a beautiful gallery show that she hosted. So there's so many options. And I think when you're starting out, it's important to just meet yourself where you're at, especially when it comes to your budget. I never want artists to overextend themselves financially. We need all that money for our food, shelter, and art supplies, right? But as you grow and as you build your income streams, then of course you can invest and have more luxurious spaces, but it won't take away from the experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's so many like good places that you can organize these things. And yeah, and I really do think it can open up so many opportunities. Um, how like what do you suggest as far as when people are like approaching places? I wonder what types of things they would say.
Yeah, well, when I started, it was very awkward. I just kind of was like, "Hi, I'm an artist," and I want to hang it. No, I wasn't. I was a little more professional than that, but but that's literally how I started. And then I was like, "Okay, we're gonna get a little more sophisticated." So I would always start with emails, but I think if you can't find the email, you can go in person, ask the person at the front desk to connect you to whoever is in charge of the walls. Typically we'll see art on walls already. So that will spark an idea in your mind, like, hey, I kind of want to be in this building. And then you can find out whether through the front desk or emailing the organization to see who's in charge of the walls that hang the art. And then I usually would email them my work and a little bit about myself and introduce myself, compliment them on something genuinely that I appreciate about their building or their company, and then see if I usually just ask, I say, hey, are there any opportunities to, maybe collaborate and have an exhibition in the space? We'll bring in some local business. So always like kind of leading with value and how you can serve their mission as well. And I find that most people are so receptive to that. And if they're not, or they don't have the capacity to host you, it's just a no. It's not going to kill you, right?
Yeah, one thing that just also crossed my mind as far as the benefits is, yeah, these can be beautiful spaces, and then getting photos of your work in these spaces that you get to share, and whether you send it out to your art update like an email list or put it on social media, all of these things help artists kind of like position themselves in where they want to be, and the more that like people see their work, yeah, the more things are created. There's just endless opportunities. I hope that everyone who's listening to this like goes out there and just plans something.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I also want to share something too that comes up is that a lot of times artists will say, this is like a little bit of future tripping, but they'll be like, well, in my local area, there's not a lot of money. People don't really have budgets for art if it's a smaller town. And I would argue that it's still worth it, even if that is the case. I always say there's an exception. There's always someone with a budget and who loves art. But there are cases where a town might not have, the demographic that is your ideal collector. However, like you mentioned, taking that picture in front of your work in a beautiful space. I had a show at our local government building. I got a grant from the local arts division a few years ago, and they had me have a solo show. No one came. I swear, three people came to my
Yeah,
opening.
it feels like that.
But you know what happened the next day? Someone from London bought one of the paintings in that show because I posted a picture of me proudly posing in front of my work. And that just taught me, like, one, thank goodness, we live in a very globalized community, for better, for worse. We're not limited to our space, but sometimes just showing an image of us with our work in an actual space just plants that seed in a potential collector and be like, oh, I can actually, like, this is a tangible thing. So I just wanted to let anyone know who's on the fence, like, oh, I don't live in a big area, like no one's going to show up. Who cares? Make it an online event.
Oh, totally. And yeah, oh, that's so true. You could do like a live, like online Zoom, like art talk or something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, sending out an art update, like an email with the photos. So often I sell work in that way, not even necessarily like, of course, at shows sometimes, but sometimes nothing does sell, at a show. And then, but it'll sell, from photos of me like sharing it online or things like that. But
Exactly.
and there are, of course, like lots of so many considerations as we're planning something like this, and there's so much to be learned. Like you and I have kind of worked out all the bugs and had all the embarrassing, moments to figure out
So
what are
many.
some of this, and that's what your course can help streamline and make sure that it just goes smoothly and everything like that. I wonder, what can you think of any of the types of embarrassing bumps that we'd come across.
Oh my gosh, there's some I don't even know where to begin with that one. I think
Yeah.
I think the skill that I actually don't teach in my course that should be a bonus is how to exit awkward conversations with people
Oh,
you don't want to talk to.
100,000%.
I'll tell Gita because she's, we collaborated on this course. I'm like, Gita, I'm gonna put like an SOS, how to exit. Because I had actually at the same exhibition at the Opera House that I shared earlier, I had a man. He was under the influence. He was having a little too much fun at the wine table, and he just kept asking me about my bedroom paintings, and it was the most awkward thing I've ever experienced. And my boyfriend was like talking to a coworker, so he couldn't come rescue me. And I was just like looking around the room, like, help, get me out of here. But eventually, he was fine. And he was well-meaning. He was just a little too excited.
I've had
But
like seriously, how do we? I think after the fact, after my awkward like scenario where I couldn't get out, and I ended up stuck for like 3 hours.
oh my God. Oh my God.
Like, listen, I just have to go to the restroom. Like anything, get me out of here. Like, what can you think of?
I think what I did actually last week, I just kind of like to move around. Nothing really happened last week at all.
Yeah.
Everything was fine, but I just kind of, if a person is taking a lot of my time, I just want to be mindful that I'm interacting with other people. So I will say something like, I just got to go check in on this. I'll come back around later. Like, give me a moment. And you're the host of the event, so usually they get that you're not just there to talk with one person the entire time. So that seems to work really well. Oh yeah, restrooms always. Who can argue with the restroom excuse?
It is important to have like strategies, very much so. I think a lot of the sticking points can be around these kind of conversations. Also, like when it's time to kind of wrap up the conversation, but they're still interested. One of the things I learned early on was not to be like, okay, great to talk to you, bye. Like, because then I would see them be like, oh, do I have to leave now? And they'd like be like,
Yeah,
leave. So instead, I'd be like, oh, well, great to talk to you. I'll let you enjoy the show, and then they
I
keep
like that.
looking around. So yeah, I just feel like there must be so much, yeah, that you guys have like learned that you're bringing into this course. So
Yeah, I want to share some other tips too, but one thing I want to ask you actually is what are some topics that you talk with collectors or visitors to at your exhibitions? Because I know that can be really hard for a brand new artist. Like, what do I even say?
oh,
What do you do when someone approaches you and your work?
well, actually, and this is something again that I learned by doing these types of like shows that I like curated at alternative spaces, just like what you're teaching about. So it just goes to show how valuable that is. But what I actually discovered is that they might almost pose as if they want to know all of my intentions behind the work, but they actually don't. They actually want to tell me all of what they read in the work, and they just want validation that it's okay that they're reading that. And my work is like you can really interpret it in so many different ways, so I'm genuinely interested in the way it's being read by like different people. So mostly I just kind of say like thank you, like make sure not to say oh no it's not that good, just say thank you over and over, and then say and sort of be like, oh, that's like really interesting, I love that take on it, I can see it, and then a little bit of me interjecting my intentions, but yeah, not to kind of go on and on.
Yeah, I love that. Giving them space to kind of experience it on their own through their own lens. I think that's so powerful and important. And
Yeah.
like you said, I find that most people, like I just had my solo show in June. When people come up to you, 9 times out of 10, they have something they want to tell you. And just letting them share it with whatever, that can be really, really fun. Or if they're not, if they come up to me and they say something like, are you the artist? I'll usually just say yes and let me know if you have any questions. And then I'll just like kind of like make a mental note to keep my energy open. Like I'm here, I'm receptive. I make eye contact and I make them feel comfortable, but I don't like overload them with information because honestly, art is its own language. So we can explain it all we want in words, but everyone's going to have a completely different interaction with it. So that's part of the magic.
True. Yeah, and it does help take some of the pressure off too. If we're nervous about going to the art show, it's helpful to remember that we don't actually probably have to talk too much about our own intentions in the work. So that's,
Yeah.
yeah. And you're a recent graduate of my Visionary Artist Master program. What was the biggest takeaway for you after after completing the program.
It's so funny. I loved that program so much. It came to me at the perfect time. But what I think your program gave me, which I'm actually still integrating, because I had such a busy spring, I knew I wanted to be in that program, but I also like was, getting ready for 10 million exhibitions. But one thing it gave me was just this. I loved your exercise for uncovering with like intuitive painting and reminding me, because actually I had the 25-minute a day rule also, but I forgot about it. Like because I was so busy, as you get like more opportunities, you're just like always working on something. And I realized, like, especially as I'm coming back right now without any agenda, with no idea what I'm doing, those 25 minutes mixed with intuitive exercises just to uncover like what's coming up, what do I want to do next. That's been really, really valuable. And I'm actually implementing it right now. And I will have results eventually, but I was just sharing with you before we started recording is like, I don't know what's happening, but it's such a beautiful place to just allow for inner things to come out and to kind of like meet new ideas. It's like meeting like, I don't know, like a date or a muse. So I found that was really, really beautiful. And I love just the tools, the simple tools that you share with your students for because it's something like you created a system, and the system is something we're always going to use because we're never going to like arrive and have this thing that we do all the time. Like every cycle of our new work is like a new beginning. So we kind of have to start like, with the ideas and the intuitive nudges and the inspiration, and then of course getting to work. So it's an amazing program. 10 out of 10 recommend to anyone who needs that support with their developing their voice and seeing what's next. And I'm excited to see what's next.
See what's next for you too. Yeah, and I love those two tools too. And I love what you said about how it's kind of a cycle. I'm constantly returning to them too. And yeah, the 25 minutes a day is so useful when we start to get really busy too. Yeah, and I love the intuitive painting. Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's actually perfect too. Like as you're getting ready for a show, something that we start our going back to your own art show program is we start by figuring out what is this show about? Is it a body of work we already have, or are we creating something new for it? Is it a group show, solo show? So using those like journaling slash intuitive painting tools can be a great way to get that clarity as well. Because Gita and I always joke when artists set out to plan their first show, they act like they need to put all their work in it. We're like, no, you're going to have many shows. This is one show. You need to just focus on like one idea for each one. And it's great to have that clarity by doing some inner work.
Oh, I love that. It sounds so comprehensive because actually a lot of the time I find that when I have a show like that I'm working towards, the work actually I create more work and it's like more cohesive, more unified, like so that's actually like amazing that you bring that piece into like what's the show gonna be?
No,
Yeah.
now I'm inspired. Now I need to go plan. Like, I think I'll have a show downstairs of our studio building just for funsies.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd like to take a break from like serious gallery shows and just make something for like myself and the local community. So now I'm gonna go and use your tools to help me figure out what that show is gonna be. Exciting. I love planning stuff.
Yeah, I love planning stuff too. And where can people learn more about all of the things you do? You're the founder of Create Magazine, Art Queens, and the host of Art and Cocktails, and then this new course that you've got. Well, let's start with the course. Where can people find more
Yeah. So the
information?
best, and I'm going to send you a link so you can share in your show notes. So we have a free guide. It's called Checklist to Market Your Show, because a lot of times people get overwhelmed. Like, what do I do? How do I get people to show up? So we just have like basics, like newsletter, social media, reaching out to local news outlets like newspapers, blogs, and all that. So that's a free resource that's available to anyone. And once you sign up for it, you also have a free masterclass sent to your inbox the next day, just to help you plan your show. And then our program is with myself and Geeta Joshi, who's a London-based curator, and it's called Your Own Art Show. And it's taking like an artist's perspective and a curator's perspective. So even if you're not a fine artist, but you're interested in creating exhibitions, like say jury shows or community group shows of some sort, or even fundraisers, we cover everything from planning to finding a venue to installing it like a professional, and then of course marketing, spreading the word, getting media and collectors to show up. And then we also have some bonuses like how to create a juried show, how to like make content at your show, like everything you can think of show related. It's in that program. It's pretty amazing, and it's all self-paced. We do bonus calls on Zoom like every season. Like we'll have one coming up August 16th, but you can take it at your own pace. So if you wanted to have a show next month, you could just go through the program and plan it right away. So
Wow, that sounds amazing. I'll definitely include a link to that in the description. And do you want to just say a little bit about the other things that you do as
yeah.
well?
Thank you so much for letting me share. So I am an artist first and foremost, and then my other branches are the tree, our Create magazine, which is just like my heart for the art community. I love highlighting all the incredible talent all over the world. We have such an amazing community. And then my coaching programs are Art Queens, and of course, your own art show. And then I have a free podcast as well called Art and Cocktails, where I share tons of tips and mindset tools and my personal experiences, and guests, such amazing guests like Kristy, who was on the show a few months ago. And that is on Art and Cocktails on iTunes, Spotify, and all the places.
Yeah, oh, you just do so much for the art community, and I'll include links to all of those as well as your website and Instagram for your personal work in the show notes. And it's just so good to talk to you today, Kat. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing all of this amazing knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Down to Art. Don't forget to pre-order a copy of my book, Become a Great Artist, now and get free access to the course on color and composition and art. Thank you so much for being with us.